Hey guys, this is MZ here. Today we are basically breaking down my EP and basically showing you new skills that I've learned and the technical processes that I've used which I've incorporated within my tracks. So, first one, or shall I say, first of all, my EP is called The Lost and Found Tapes, Vol.1. Um, my aesthetic as a producer is around the 90s style of house music. I just love like the raw edge of like the 90s sounds. That's why it's called The Lost and Found Tapes, because originally I wanted to master the tape and actually hopefully get some sort of like cassettes as well for like distribution. But yeah, I will talk about that a bit later on in my summation. But yeah, first of all, this track here called Illegal Fun. This is 120 beats per minute, so um, around the average house time, BPM. House ranges from 120 to around 128, or even around 130. It really does depend on the genre or the subgenre of it. Um, and I don't really know what to class my my EP as, like what genre within house, because it's so experimental and I've pushed the boundaries a lot with it using samples, which I love because it's something unique and something I haven't really heard before. So yeah, this is brilliant. I'm really happy with it. But today we are going to talk about certain aspects within my track, such as sampling within this part of the video. I will be going on to like programming later with drums and other sampling techniques I've used, the effects I've used within the mixing process, and yeah, how I just articulated that throughout my journey. So, if I hopefully you can see my mouse on the screen. Sorry if you can't, but I'm pointing it over here. So over here we have the lead, and then I have my drums, hats, kicks, shakers, bass, cymbals, to show when another part of the track is commencing. Um, my other my other hats, and then a load of vocals as well, sampled from Steely Dan's Glamour Profession, which is a 1980s track. And I actually really love that track by them. It's something that I have found that is quite different for the rest of their discography. It's quite disco orientated, four to the floor, drums, funky bass line, and yeah, it's something totally different to what else, like other music they've produced. So that's why I chose that track. And when I was listening to that track, I found certain aspects that would suit in a house track if I was able to sample those correctly with looping and splitting up the different loops and cutting the loops and stretching the loops and time stretching the loops. That process has been hard, but I'll talk a bit about that later. But yeah, my lead line is pretty much taken from a stripped down version of Glamour Profession that I was able to find on YouTube, luckily enough. I did look for stems for this track. I looked on Reddit, I looked online, looked at different forums, seeing if anyone actually had any stems for this track, because I know there are other Steely Dan tracks that people have stems for. But unfortunately, no one had any stems, so that was a bit of and it was a bit annoying, because I found with the original track there was a lot going on, and if I were to sample things from that track, it might clash with my bass or drums or lead line, and it just wouldn't sound right, and it'd be totally weird, and it wouldn't sound right within the mix. So if I show you a bit of actually the stripped down version of Glamour Profession, because I think that's important to show you the mixed down version I found, and how then you can see how I could cut those up, those different samples.
So 5 outside the stadium, special delivery for Hoops McCann. Rude and charisma, hard from the shadow, he stood looking good. He's a crowd-pleasing man. One-on-one, he's schoolyard Superman. Crashing the backboard, he's jungle jam again. When it's all over, we'll make some calls from my car. We're a star. It's a glamour profession. The LA concession. Local boys will spend the quarter.
So yeah, that's basically the stripped down version of Glamour Profession by Steely Dan. And you know, working with this this version of the track, maybe it was an early demo they released or something like that, but I found it was a lot more easier to cut my samples up and incorporate with those within my track, because before it was just a mess. The drums would clash with my drums, the bass line would then clash with my bass line, and it'd sound out of key, it would sound, it just wasn't flowing right, so something had to be done. So that's when my research took, really, was looking for this, because that was the main thing to find, because if I didn't find this stripped back version, I wouldn't have sampled this song. It was a difficult song to sample in the first place, so yeah, finding this one was really a blessing. So basically, I should also mention that I'm working in Reason 10. The software you have to buy, I think it's about £400. It's a really good software. You get a ton of different instruments, like the Dr. Octo Rex and all these different effects units you can use. And this one I actually bought myself, the Poly 6, because you can actually buy more plugins and add-ons within the Reason store. Alligator, Synchronous, just loads of different effects that you can use with this. And it's so creative as well, because you can then patch into other instruments, like as you can see here, and then actually change the sound via patching in to other instruments, which I found really cool. So yeah, so let's start talking about my samples that I used. So for instance, my lead line is quite simplistic. It consists of 2 notes, which you wouldn't really think as a lead line, more of something, you know, that sits underneath the mix. Sort of my samples take over more of the lead line, so this lead line is sort of just in the background of the song at the start, but then when you get to the chorus and the middle part of the track, it just sort of, these samples take over. But basically, if I show you how I've done this, so before I loaded them into this sampler here, I basically got that track and then cut a segment or a loop out of it that I found was fitting for my track. So actually trying to loop Steely Dan segments was quite difficult, even in the stripped down version, because there'd always be some other instrument coming in, or the horns especially would throw me off guard when trying to loop the segment. So that was kind of difficult, and that's where the effects come into it, but I'll go on to that a bit later. So this sampler here is this sampler here is basically in Reason. So it's the advanced sampler, so you can pitch it to however you want, and you can do a lot of different things with it. I didn't really bother changing any parameters with this, sort of just left it how it was, so I won't delve into that too much. But if I literally just show you my lead line and how it sounds, you'll see it sounds boring. But when it's together within the whole mix, it like shines the mix through. You know, it has a lot of high end to it, so it allows to shine those high frequencies through within my mix. Oh, sorry. I got like this stuff. Yeah, mute that. So yeah, that was just practically just two notes that I played. And you know, at first when I did that, I didn't like it. I wanted to progress with it, but because with sampling, when you play up and down the keys, obviously the samples get faster or slower. So yeah, creating a lead line with this part here was kind of difficult. But the two notes were okay, and as I said, my other samples do take over in the track, and this is sort of like a background lead, I would call it. Yeah, so if I show you some of the samples that I've used, the other samples I've used in my track. So this here is one of the vocals I've used. And let me just solo that together. So basically, I have layered these two here with the original vocal, and with also a vocal with effects on it. And I believe I used the triple filtered gate on that one, or actually no, I used the synchronous on this one. And I used this preset called the method gate, which is interesting. And so yeah, if I play the original vocal by itself, you'll understand what I mean. It's a glamour profession. And then if I play the one with effects on, you'll also see what I mean. So I wanted this vocal to have effects on it, but when I used the synchronous, I found the preset that I used, I liked it a lot, and it really fit my song well, but the vocal wasn't actually shining through, and it lost its body going through the effects processor. So what I did was I just duplicated it and left the effects off the original, so you can still hear the original effects, vocal shining through. So that really helps the body of my track. And then if I show you some other samples, if I actually just play you this part here, I can show you some stuff. So, as you can hear, there's a lot going on within this track, but I hopefully you could hear that the lead line sort of was underneath the track, like it sort of wasn't a progressive lead line, but just to give more space and awareness, I guess, to my track. But yeah, so these other samples here that I've incorporated within this Legal Fun, which is the first track on my EP, I can show you some other stuff that I've done with the sampler, but I want to first explain how I sampled and also the alligator triple filtered gate. So first of all, I'll explain this because I think that's important to explain within this video. So for anyone who doesn't know what a gate is, gate simply opens and closes. So basically, let sound in, so opens the gate, let sound in, close the gate, don't let sound in. So it's as simple as that, pretty much. But the difference with this gate is that you can rhythmically progress with your track and change a static sound into something with a lot of rhythm to it and a lot of drive. All these parameters here, you can see a lot of them, but essentially what it's doing, if you can see this bit here, is it's splitting the signal into 3 parts. So part of the sample signal is going through the high pass, part of it's going through the band pass, and then part of it's going through the low pass. And you can use the LFO, frequency, resonance, or envelope to articulate what sound you are looking for. So yeah, I messed around with this a lot, experimented with it a lot religiously, but also did a lot of research onto it too, because I found out things I could do which I couldn't, which was this little box over here where basically, I think it goes up to 64, something like that, but it changes the rhythm pattern within what the gate is doing, which is really interesting because I didn't know you could actually do that within this device here. So, and then over here we have like the mixing section, I guess I can call it, which you can add in drive, phaser, delay, pan, and then volume. So all of this here just goes like 3 signals through here, and yeah, it's really cool what you can do with this device. But if I can show you, like if I shuffled this, you can basically, which is on the solo. Actually, that probably wasn't a good one to use. But if I show you on another one, actually, so if I go to this sample here, okay, so this sample here, this has got phase delay on it. If I shuffled this, like, I don't know, a couple of times, it can change the rhythm pattern within the track. So yeah, that was really cool because I didn't actually know I could do that. So researching the alligator triple filtered gate through either YouTube videos or online resources, I've been able to show my capabilities within music and also with samples as well. Um, Another thing I guess I can mention is that even though I sampled from this stripped back version, um, there were still points within the samples that I felt were clashing with my melody, or drum. Well, not actually melody or keys, I guess you could say this is. But yeah, there was parts clashing with it. So how I went around this was I sort of took everything out, um, or used them at certain points, at like breakdown points, I guess I can say. So for ones I didn't use effects on, I basically used them at certain points where breaks would happen or rises would happen, so that basically they didn't clash with either with my lead line. So if I show you here, um, so basically that's what I did because I found that I felt like the sample was still clashing with my lead, um, and it just didn't sound right. If I move these over here like this, I guess I could show you what I mean. Yeah, they were just constantly clashing with that, as you could hear there. They were clashing with this lead here. Yeah, because it's only two notes playing, it wasn't playing a a fully developed lead, I could say. So it was definitely clashing with that. So that's one of the things that I learned to do as well. Um, Also over here we have my solo, I guess you could call it. But it basically just mixes up the track a little bit because even though house music is repetitive, and I love that about house music, but sometimes it can get a little bit boring if new elements aren't thrown in. So with each section, I've tried to add in new elements. Sometimes just little subtle changes or sometimes big changes, such as the solo. But I wanted to just, mix it up a little bit, and not make my track boring. So here's my solo. I mean, it sounds a little bit rubbish on its own if I'm being very critical about my work. But when it's embedded within the track, it sounds brilliant. And I think that's a lot of things about when creating music. Some things might sound good on their own. So, they might sound good on their own, but when you actually include them within your track, they sound brilliant. And, sometimes you can be surprised, like I was with this solo. So if I can play it to you with the whole track again and show you what that sounds like. So yeah, as I said, that sounds brilliant within my whole track, but on its own, it doesn't sound good at all. And I also layered it to also give it more thickness and more body, but also to add some subtle changes and effects that you might not hear that well, but I think because I've obviously listened to this track and I produced it, listened to this track thousands of times now. But yeah, you can hear like subtle changes. So if I were just to solo this on its own. So yeah, it's not like a big aspect within my track, but I just wanted to layer it again so I could add some cool rhythms from the triple filtered gate, the alligator, and then yeah, as you've heard, that's what they sound like together. And then also another point to make, as I was making the point earlier, is when I dropped parts out of the track to allow a sample to come in. Here is a very good point because, as you can see, I've taken out the lead here, just left like the drums and bass in. Because I mean, if I left it in, it would just be clashing again. So if I can just play that to you real quick. And then the lead line comes back in once that sample's finished. So yeah, that was something cool experimenting with, because I felt if I left it in, it's just going to clash with most of my track and it just wouldn't sound good. And it wouldn't sound right too. It'd be weird keys everywhere. Yeah, also cutting up these loops. I sort of touched on this earlier, but I just basically either drag them into Reason Audacity or Audacity, sorry, and yeah, just created a loop from there. And then once I created a loop I was happy with, I was able to then bounce them out and put them into Reason if I hadn't had them already in Reason, and then time stretched them to fit my BPM of 120 beats per minute. Some loops were very hard. There was a lot of extensive looping and cutting within this track, especially this sort of like call and response lead line here. I guess I could call it, there wasn't a perfect loop there. And also this is actually a vocal segment taken from the track Steely Dan's Glamour Profession, but because there wasn't a perfect loop, there was like a horn section coming in. I couldn't exactly get a perfect loop on that, so that was really difficult. So I thought, instead of wasting it, why not put it to good use? And then that's what I did, and then basically put it through the phase delay. But if I show you it bypassed, this is the original sound.
I drove the Chrysler. I drove the Chrysler. I drove the Chrysler.
So as you can see, it just wasn't a perfect loop, and I could have left it in my track, but I already had enough vocal parts going on, enough vocal samples going on, so I just thought not to. And also the perfect loop sort of puts you off when listening to the track. It just doesn't sound right within the mix, so that's why I added the triple filtered gate to it, as I've already explained. But yeah, for this track, that's pretty much it. In other videos, I'll be going through my other tracks and explaining other instruments I've used and other processes I've used. But as I said, I don't want to talk about everything within my track, just important aspects. Because if I just said, oh, here's the drums, here's that, or here's the bass, it just would sound really boring. So I just want to pack new knowledge for someone to use, and how sampling is very creative, and how it's not just about stealing or taking out someone else's work, but actually doing something to change or put new light onto that track. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video, but thank you very much for listening and take care.